Welcome to Sermons in the Park, a ministry exploring biblical truth from the Word of God, focusing on the truths that help us in our daily walk with Christ in every aspect of our lives. Now, here is your Reverend, Jamie McCaskill.
Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to an all-new Sermons in the Park. As always, I am your Reverend Jamie McCaskill. Now, before one more word goes out of my mouth, I want to make sure to say Happy Easter to all of you. I hope you're all spending time with your family today on this beautiful Easter Sunday. I hope you're all remembering the reason for the season and spending time, like I said, just spend time with your family, and especially the ones you love. You know what I mean? And then let's do like we always do when we first start. Let's bow our heads and thank our Heavenly Father for all the great and wonderful gifts He's given us. God, we come to you today on this beautiful day just to say thank you. Thank you again for all the wonderful things you've done. The fact that, Lord, this morning we woke up with breath and we were able to go out about our day and do what we're supposed to do. We thank you again for your Son Jesus, who came all those years ago just so that we can have the closer relationship with you and be forgiven for our sins. Because if it wasn't for him, Father, we would never be able to live up to the expectations that you have for us. We know, Father, that we failed in so many different ways. We failed in your laws. We failed in just living up to the moral code that you set down for us. We've all done such horrible things. We've lied, we've cheated, we've stolen, we've all done it. We're sorry for that. We're sorry for the way that we've lived. And we know that if it wasn't for your Son Jesus, Father, we would never be able to live up to it. And we thank you again. We thank you for him. We thank you for breath, food, air, water, all the wonderful gifts you give us each and every day. And we're just so thankful. And we're thankful, Father, because we know that, you're dealing with us on a small molecular level. You're healing us in ways we have never seen. And we thank you for that. And again, we thank you in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. So, if this is the first time you've joined us, what we do here is we take a book of the Bible. On Sundays, we take a book of the Bible and we break it down chapter by chapter, verse by verse. And yes, sometimes we do it word by word because, and I know I say this each week, but words change over time. One word might mean one thing now, but back hundreds of years ago, it meant something completely different. So that's what we do here. We break it down. And this week, we're up to chapter 27 of the book of Genesis. So if you have not already been tuning in, I invite you now to pause this video or podcast where it is. Go back to the very first one, because I actually did an introduction to Genesis. And then that next week, I actually went and we did, the whole chapter 1, verse 1, and right on up until where we're at today. So go ahead, pause this video or podcast, and go do that. And I promise you, I'll be right here when you get back. So, this last week we were reading about how Esau had married two different women. And we know that they both were what? Neither of them were Hebrew, right? And we talked about how Isaac and Rebekah, they were not happy about this at all. And this is understandable because, you see, Hebrews were expected to only marry Hebrews because they were the holy people of God. So they were required to live to a higher standard. So they had to marry Hebrew, within the Hebrews. And here we are. This week we're up to chapter 27. So let's go ahead and read chapter 27. We're going to read verses 1 all the way to 46. Now I'm going to go ahead and warn you now, this probably will be a two-parter. We'll see as we get along. 27 verses 1 all the way, like I said, to verse 46. And it came to pass that when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau, his eldest son, and said unto him, My son. And he said unto him, Behold, here am I. And he said, Behold now, I am old. I know not the day of my death. Now therefore take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver, and thy bow, and go out to the field, and take me some venison, and make me savory meat, so as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless thee before I die. And Rebekah heard when Isaac spoke to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt for venison, and to bring it. And Rebekah spake unto Jacob her son, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying, Bring me venison, and make me savory meat, that I may eat, and bless thee before the Lord, before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, according to that which I command thee. Go now to the flock, and fetch me from thence 2 good kids of the goats, and I will make them savory meat for thy father, such as he loveth. And thou shalt bring it to thy father, that he may eat, and that he may bless thee before his death. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, Behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. My father, peradventure, will fill me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver, and I shall bring a curse upon me, and not a blessing. And his mother said unto him, Upon me be thy curse, my son. Only obey my voice, and go fetch me them. And he went and fetched and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory meat such as his father loved. And Rebekah took goodly raiment, and her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them upon Jacob her younger son. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats upon his hands and upon his smooth of his neck. And he gave the savory meat and she gave the savory meat and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. And he came unto his father and said, My father. And he said, Here am I. Who art thou, my son? And Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau, thy firstborn. I have done according to as thou badest me. Arise, I pray thee, sit and eat of my venison, and thy soul may bless me. And Isaac said unto his son, How is it that thou hast found it so quickly, my son? And he said, Because the Lord thy God brought it to me. And Isaac said unto Jacob, Come near, I pray thee, that I may fill thee, my son, whether thou be my very son Esau or not. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him and said, The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he discerned him not, because his hands were hairy, and his brother Esau's hands, and he blessed him. And he said, Art thou my very son Esau? And he said, I am. And he said, Bring it near to me, and I will eat of my son's venison, that my soul may bless thee. And he brought it near to him, and he did eat, and he brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Isaac said unto him, Come near now, and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment, and blessed him, and said, See, the smell of my son is as the smell of my field, which the Lord hath blessed. Therefore God give thee of the dew of the heaven, and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be every one that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. And it came to pass, as soon as Isaac had made an end in blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone out of the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. And he also had made savory meat, and brought it unto his father, and said unto his father, Let my father arise and eat of his son's venison, that thy soul may bless me. And Isaac his father said unto him, Who art thou? And he said, I am thy son, thy firstborn Esau. And Isaac trembled very exceedingly, and said, Who? Where is he that hath taken venison, and brought it to me? And I have eaten, and all before thou comest, and have blessed him. Yea, and he shall be blessed. And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with a great exceedingly bitter cry, and said unto his father, Bless me, even me also, O my father. And he said, Thy brother came with subtlety, The word's divided in two on my Bible. And hath taken away thy blessing. And he said, Is not he rightly named Jacob? For he hath supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. And he said, Hast thou not reserved a blessing for me? And Isaac answered, said unto Esau, Behold, I have made him thy lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants. And with corn and wine have I sustained him. And what shall I do now with thee, my son? And Esau said unto his father, Hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also. O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and the dew of the heaven from above. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. And Esau hated Jacob, because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. And these words of Esau, her elder son, were told to Rebekah. And she sent and called Jacob her younger son, and said unto him, Behold, thy brother Esau, as touching thee, doth comfort himself, purposing to kill thee. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, and arise. Flee thou to Laban my brother, and to Haran, and tarry with him a few days, until thy brother's fury turn away. Until thy brother's anger turn away from thee, and he forget that which thou hast done to him. Then I will send and fetch thee from thence. Why should I be deprived also of you both in one day? And Rebekah said to Isaac, I am weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob take a wife of the daughters of Heth, such as these, which are of the daughters of the land, what good shall my life do me? All right, so again, if this is your first time watching and you didn't go back and watch the others, what we do after we read the whole chapter, we go back to the first verse we read, and then we break it down. So let's reread verse 1 now, and what does that tell us? And it came to pass that when Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau his eldest son, and said unto him, My son. And he said unto him, Behold, here am I. So what do we learn here? We learn that Isaac was old. To me, when I read this, I feel like Isaac thought that he was near death. Am I right? We see that he was blind, and we know that he did not live beyond 137 years. And he is 137 in this verse. This was also the same age that Ishmael died. I do not think that he expected to live another 43 years after this. If we look at a few verses, we can easily calculate his age. We look at, these Genesis verses here, like 35:28, 30, chapter 30, we have 24 and 25. We have chapter 31, verse 41. We have chapter 41, verses 46 and 47. We have chapter 45, verse 6, and also chapter 47, verse 9. When we look at all those days, that time right there, we get the age of 137 years. This makes his twin sons, both of them, at the age of 77. We can also tell that Esau was Isaac's favorite as well, can't we? We see that when Isaac called on him, right? Esau was right there. He was ready to answer him. So let's go to verse 2 now and read that one. And he said, Behold, now I am old. I know not the day of my death. Isaac says again, he says, I am old. Remember, Isaac lived for another 43 years after this. And at this time right here, like I said, he's 137 years old. All right, let's go to verse 3 now. Now therefore take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver and thy bow, and go out to the field and take me some venison. So he's telling Esau, he says, now therefore take thee, I pray thee, thy weapons. Now, this could be translated as weapons with an S, or vessels, or even instruments, because it's actually talking about his hunting tools. Okay? It then says thy quiver and thy bow. The quiver, of course, is where you would put your arrows in, right? Now, did you know it gets its name from the Hebrew language? That's right, from it being hung at the girdle. There's another word that is more commonly used for a quiver. All right? Anyway, if you look at the writings of Onkelos and as well as Jarkey, you will find that they interpret this to be speaking of a sword. You can also find that in Abin Ezra as well as Ben Melech. They both approve of that. They explain that it could be either a quiver or a sword, that they were both necessary for hunting. And then the verse goes on to say, and go out to the field and take me some venison. Now, when we read this, we automatically think of what you and I call venison. But that's not what is necessarily intended here. This could mean anything that Esau could have hunted in that field. Whether it be a rabbit, a wild goat, whatever. And indeed, when you read the later, that seems to be what Isaac loved. When we look at, the preparation that Rebekah actually made. So let's look at verse 4 now. And make me savory meat, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, that my soul may bless thee before I die. So what is Isaac planning on doing here? He says that my soul may bless thee. Think about what he's doing. Isaac is ignoring the words of God. Well, and by that I mean the ones that he spoke to Rebekah. He forgets that that Esau bartered away his birthright. He overlooks Esau's marriages, those grievous marriages. He was still intent on treating Esau as the eldest and granting him the blessing of that birthright. So what we're reading here is Isaac arranging for Esau to make his favorite meal before he would then bestow his final fatherly blessing on his favorite son. Remember, even after what Esau had done, he is still Isaac's favorite. And apparently, he was ignoring the fact that Esau had bartered away his birthright. And of course, he married those heathen women. This is remarkable when you honestly think about it. Just think about all the pains that Abraham went through to make sure that Isaac married the right type of woman. And what we're reading here is that Isaac knew he would not live much longer, and he's making what he thinks is a final request of his favorite son. And I also think that Esau knew, he knew that Isaac would not live much longer. I think he wanted to make sure that he got it. He got what the Hebrews call the right-handed blessing, which means the best one. Esau was thinking that if I bring my father the food that he loves, while he's still feeling good, he'll give me the best blessing. We see Isaac tells him to what? To go kill him a deer and bring it to him. But we know, right, that Rebekah, she favors Jacob. She instigates a deception, right? We see that Jacob had to resort to lying, and Isaac, he had to rely on his other senses. He relied on his taste, his touch, his smell. And here we see he has to use them to overrule what he's hearing. We also see that the blessing, involved a benediction as well as a prediction, right? So read on with me. We're going to continue on to verse 5 now. And Rebekah heard when Isaac spake to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt for venison and to bring it. So they're speaking, right? And we see Rebekah heard it. So when she hears it, she becomes desperate because she wants Jacob to be the one that receives the blessing, doesn't she? And she believes that she can cook up some goat meat and make it taste and smell like the best venison. So she cooks up this deception because she's going to make Jacob's, she's going to make it to all that Isaac can see and feel, or feel and smell, that this is Esau and not Jacob. The verse goes on to say, and Esau went to the field to hunt for venison and to bring it. So we see that Esau, he did just what his father told him to do. And just like what, was divinely ordered, the time and the opportunity had arrived for Jacob to be the one to receive the blessing. So go on to verse 6 now. Let's read that one. And Rebekah spake unto Jacob her son, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying. So the verse begins with, and Rebekah spake unto Jacob her son. Notice, it's Jacob, the son that Rebekah was most fond of. This is her son. And he was in her tent, and the verse says that the verse goes on to say, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother. I think that she was most likely, this is my opinion here, just kind of passing by, and she heard it. And she tells him, what she heard. Isaac charging Jacob to do what? So let's go to verse 7. Bring me venison, and make me savory meat, that I may eat, and bless thee before the Lord before my death. So Rebekah tells Isaac what she heard. She tells him how his father Isaac told Esau, bring me venison and make me savory meat. Just how he told Esau to go and get him some venison out of that field, and for him to dress it into a savory way. And of course to bring it to him. And the verse says, that I may eat and bless thee before the Lord before my death. Now, this phrase right here, before the Lord, it was added, wasn't it? And I think it's added here. Now, it is possible that Isaac did say it. I'm not going to doubt that. And I believe that a historian had just left it out for the first time. Okay? And it just had more emphasis in it. Because this blessing was not only the presence of God and before him as a witness, but it also calling on him. You see, he's praying for God's direction in it. And when you pronounce it in his name and by his authority, when he approves of it, it's irrevocable. You know what? On second thought, maybe Rebekah was eavesdropping, trimming the verbs under the window there, if you follow me. And she heard what Isaac said, about blessing his favorite son. And she starts this whole thing with Jacob. So let's go on to verse 8 now. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command thee. Rebekah tells him, right? It says, therefore, my son, obey my voice. She's telling him, do what I tell you to do. She says, according to that which I command thee, meaning don't miss a detail. She's requiring her son Jacob to be respectful in his obedience to every word she says, which might not be difficult for him to perform. Okay, she knew that he would most likely, object to some of it. So she presses on him. She commands him. She knows that this would be very, very important. Mama Bear had come up with a scheme to change the plans of Papa Bear. She reminds Jacob, obey me. Let's read on. Let's read these plans, shall we? Verse 9. Go now to the flock and fetch me from thence 2 good kids of the goats, and I will make them savory meat for thy father, such as he loveth. She says, go now to the flock. Now this would be the flock that was under Jacob's care, right? She demands this because, what they're about to do required haste. They needed to be done quickly. The verse says, and fetch me from thence 2 good kids of the goats. These are the young ones, the kids as it says, because they would be, they would be fat. I know this because of what Jonathan and Ben Melech says, okay? And sure, 2 of them seem like it would be too much for them to dress, just for Isaac. But now bear in mind that Rebekah intended to only use the choicest and most tender and delicate parts, the ones that are best suited for what she's about to do. She wanted the parts that would taste the most like venison, right? The rest, she would, of course, just give to the family. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did she have the right to do this without talking to her husband, right? I dug into the Jewish writings, and this is what I came up with. In her dowry, Isaac allowed her to take 2 kids of the goats every day, okay? Now, the verse goes on to say, and I will make them savory meat for thy father, such as he loveth. She was going to make this meat taste like venison. And according to Jarkey, the kid tasted like a young doe, a young roe or fawn. You see, by the way she would season the meat, a natural taste would be the natural taste, I should say, would be disguised. It would be so altered that it would be indistinguishable. She was able, in her skills, to deceive Isaac in more ways than one, right? So let's go to verse 10 now. And thou shalt bring it to thy father, that he may eat, and that he may bless thee before his death. So she tells Jacob to what? And thou shalt bring it to thy father. Bring the meat to him, right? Pretend that it's venison. To pretend that he was Esau bringing it to him, right? The verse says, that he may eat, and that he may bless thee before his death. She knew that the blessing belonged to Jacob. She knew this because of what they call a divine oracle, as well as that, Esau had sold it to him, right? But you see, Esau, even though he was the firstborn son, and by all rights, it should be he should get it. He had not only sold the birthright to Jacob, but he forfeited the birthright when he married those 2 Canaanite women. Don't forget that. So yes, Rebekah is right. But let me add this. The way she's going about it is all wrong. What Mama Bear had figured on was that Isaac was blind. And it wouldn't be hard for Jacob to just be mistaken for Esau. She knew that it would take a while for Esau to locate a deer, right? No man who hunts can object to that. And that while he was out there hunting, she could fix up a meal using a goat, making it taste like venison. Fool Isaac into blessing Jacob, right? What's verse 11 tell us? And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Read that again. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother. You see, this shows us Jacob's nervous. What if he got caught? He could be called out on his deception and even cursed. He even tells us that later. And he says, behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man. We see here in this story that Esau was covered in hair, much like my youngest son. It sounds like he's so hairy that he was wearing hairy clothes. He was born this way. He lived out his life this way. And we know that hair, would just continue to grow. The verse goes on to say, and I am a smooth man. So he's hairless, except for the common places, like his top of his head and his eyebrows, all that good stuff, right? So let's move on. Verse 12. My father peradventure will fill me and I shall seem to him as a deceiver, and I shall bring a curse upon me and not a blessing. You see right there? We have to give Jacob credit. He objects at first, doesn't he? He's afraid that his father is going to label him a deceiver. The difference between him and Esau, the two differences, they're not going to fool his father. The blessing would have been replaced with a curse, which honestly would be befitting, right, for what the deception they're about to pull. And again, like I said, give him some credit. He realizes, right, that he would be the one responsible for the curse, not someone else. Isaac's blind, but he could still feel it, couldn't he? And Jacob knew this. He knew that Isaac would know the difference, right? Verse 13, what do we read there? And his mother said unto him, Upon me be thy curse, my son. Only obey my voice and go fetch me them. Look at that. She says, Upon me be thy curse. She's accepting full responsibility for the plan that she's cooking up. She says, if he's caught, let the curse fall on me. We know that Jacob, he followed her instructions reluctantly, right? So let's go to verse 14. Sorry about this cough, guys. I'm trying to kick it. And he went and fetched and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory meat, such as his father loved. And he went and fetched and brought them to his mother. What Rebekah said, that satisfied Jacob. So he went out to the field and he brought back 2 kids, just like his mother asked him to do. And as we know, he was right to do what she asked. Okay? Honor thy mother and thy father. Okay? The verse goes on to say, and his mother made savory meat, such as his father loved. So Rebekah picked out all the pieces that she needed. She seasoned them, of course, and we know that he loved it. He thought it was Isaac really thought it was venison. Anyway, going on, verse 15. And Rebekah took goodly raiment out of her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them upon Jacob her younger son. It says that she took goodly raiment of her eldest son. We know Esau, he was married. He'd been married about 37 years at this time. He would have had his own tents. Okay? He would have also had, he would have had his wives in their tents as well, and they would have been the ones doing his laundry. Am I wrong? So isn't it odd when you think about it? How did Rebekah have his laundry? We don't know, do we? And again, I'm gonna say this again for the 10,000th time. It's not important. If it was, the Bible would clarify it. Maybe they were the robes that were associated with some kind of a priestly function, that the head of the household would have had to do. And she kept them there to just pass them on. Maybe Esau wore them sometimes and this caused them to smell like him. I have no idea. Let's go on. Verse 16 now. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats upon his hands and made the smooth of and upon the smooth of his neck. And she placed the skins of the kid of the goat upon his hands. His hands. Notice it's plural. So that meant both of them. And all over them. The way that, that way he would look more like Esau. It also says, and upon the smooth of his neck. We can tell that his neck and his hands. This tells us they were covered in hair. If you look at a Jewish writer, Hiskuni, he observes that the skins of the goat are rough. And that their skin is similar to a hairy man. Volkart says that the hair of a goat is similar to human hair in the Eastern world. In fact, let's take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 13. 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 13. It says, and Michal took an image and laid it, Michal. Yes, because this is one of, for David's wives here. She took an image and she laid it in the bed and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster and covered it with cloth. Now, let us take a moment to deal with Rebecca here. You might be asking yourself or even me, preacher, was Rebecca a deceiving woman? Was she remembering what God had told her about her two sons before they were born? Remember, God told her that the older son would serve the younger son. And don't forget, Esau did not deserve that birthright. In fact, he sold it for a bowl of soup. Did God really give her this plan? Did she come up with this scheme on her own? Or did God give her the plan to save the blessing for Jacob? Remember, Jacob was God's plan from the very beginning. But the Hebrews gave the best blessing to the oldest son. Always. That is their custom. So was it her plan? Was it God's plan? I mean, honestly, God was not happy with Esau. Esau had sold his birthright and married a worldly woman, didn't he? I don't know. Let's move on. Verse 17 now. And she gave the savory meat and the bread which she had prepared into the hands of her son Jacob. So let's break this whole verse down, shall we? Well, we're going to start off with, and she gave the savory meat. So she gave Jacob the meat that she seasoned and she dressed, right, so that it would taste like venison. The verse says, and the bread which she had prepared. So we see that she made some bread to eat with the meat. And it says that she put it into the hands of her son Jacob. So she probably put the dish with the meat in one hand and then the dish with the bread in the other hand. Simple, right? All right, moving on. Verse 18. Probably expecting me to go longer with that one. And he came unto his father and said, my father. And he said, here am I. Who art thou, my son? The verse says, and he came unto his father. So Jacob took that food that his mother gave to him, and he went into the tent, the apartment where Isaac was, right? The verse goes on to say, and said, my father. I think he started this way so that he could make sure that he was awake. Because remember, Isaac is laid, he seems to be bedridden here. So he has to wake his father up, right? And also to let him know he's there. Because don't forget, Isaac is blind. The verse says, and he said, here am I. This is always their way of asking, right? What do you have to say? Or, I'm listening, right? We sometimes respond today by saying, yes. Anyway, he goes on to say, who art thou, my son? Now this makes me think that Jacob and Esau, they must have had a similar voice. But you see, as we read on, you'll notice he also suspects that this isn't Esau. So their voice must have been just similar enough, right? So let's go to verse 19 now. And Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau, thy firstborn. I have done according as thou badest me. Arise, I pray thee, sit and eat of my venison, that thy soul might bless me. And Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau, thy firstborn. That is a bold-faced lie. Think about it. If Jacob had only said that he was his firstborn, you or I could easily excuse him. Remember, he had bought that birthright from Esau. But when he actually says the words, I am Esau, you can't excuse that. If you say he impersonated Esau, That wouldn't do, would it? Because he says he is Esau. The verse goes on to say, I have done according as thou badest me. Again, a lie. Isaac had not, bid him to bring him venison. He also didn't ask him to go into the field or to take it and dress it for him. No. Not only did none of that happen, Jacob didn't do it either, did he? The verse goes on to say, arise, I pray thee, sit and eat of my venison. Venison! Venison means hunting. So, he means that what he had hunted, again, another lie. For it was not venison that he brought him, or anything that he had hunted. This makes it sound like Isaac was laying on a bed, maybe a couch, because, like I said, he's an infirmity here. So we see that Jacob asks him to sit up into the proper position for eating. At that time, in those parts of the country, it was sitting. The verse says, that thy soul may bless me. Remember, this was the reason he's doing it. So he speaks about that. As soon as it comes, he can bring it up. The way he's saying it here is because he wanted it to be done as soon as possible. He had to hurry up, eat, and drink. That way he can take the suspicion of him, being the wrong person off of him. Remember, this is what he had proposed for Esau, not for Jacob. And he said it while they were alone too, didn't he? Just keep that in mind. All right, verse 20. And Isaac said unto his son, how is it that thou hast found it so quickly, my son? And he said, because the Lord thy God brought it to me. I love this verse. Isaac asks a very legitimate question. It takes a while to go hunt. And Jacob was thinking, he just gone into his pen. Jacob, he just went into his pen and he grabbed 2 goats. Think about this. Jacob has the perfect chance here to confess. But what do we read? It says, and he said, because the Lord thy God brought it to me. Another lie. It wasn't the Lord. This was his mother. His mother brought them to him. Out of all of this right here is just, it's a marvel to me. We're seeing a good man here dragging the Lord our God into his affairs. Also, he does it with ease too, doesn't he? He knows that he needs Isaac to confirm him, even though he bought that birthright. We see him ascribe the success in a hunt to God. One lie had to sustain another, and another, and another. And we have this tangled web that's woven. Do you know what happens? Yes, Jacob, he gets the blessing that day, doesn't he? I will admit that. But we see the consequences of his deceit as well. First, when you pay attention, he never sees his mother again. Second, his brother Esau, he wants him dead. And third, Laban, his uncle, he goes on to deceive him. And fourth, Jacob's family life. It's full of conflict. And then the last thing, he's exiled for years from his family. Did you notice, though, he does not say the Lord my God. He also doesn't say the Lord our God. No. He says the Lord thy God. Plenty of people believe that this was done as a way of covering his deceit. Which, of course, it does make sense, because it is believed that Esau was an idolater. But there's no evidence of this anywhere in the Bible. Anywhere. I think that Jacob did this because he did not have, the confidence to call the Lord his God. Not with a lie in his mouth. Think about this, though. Jacob did all of this without any need. He didn't need to do any of this. Remember, the birthright was his. And God promised that it would be so. All right, verse 21, what do we see? And Isaac said unto Jacob, Come near, I pray thee, that I may fill thee, my son, whether thou be my very son Esau or not. Read that again, especially with all the stumbling I had to do in my mouth. And Isaac said unto Jacob, Come near, I pray thee, that I may fill thee, my son, whether thou be my very son Esau or not. And Isaac said unto Jacob, Come near, I pray thee, that I may fill thee, my son. Isaac suspects fraud. Isaac knows Esau's hairy. He also knows what? That Jacob isn't. So he thought to himself, right? I can fill it if this is an imposter. If there was one. The verse goes on, whether thou be my very son Esau or not. Like I said, he's still thinking that, hey, this might be him. Right? And then what do we read in verse 22? And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him and said, The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. We read what Jacob does here. It says, And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father. This was easy for him to do. Right? Because his father can't see him. There's no way he can see that this isn't him. Even if he had fear in his face. Okay? The verse says, and he felt him. Notice, it does not say that he only felt his hands. That is a misconception. A lot of movies have that in it. A lot of pictures have that in it. But it never says that he only felt his hands. It just says that he felt him. Maybe his arms, his neck. But especially his hands. Because we had the mention of that, right? Isaac says, and said the voice is Jacob's voice. It's interesting when we read this, because he notices that the voice is off. Because it was not Esau, it was Jacob. The verse says, but the hands are the hands of Esau. It should say are like Esau, because they were hairy. The Targum of Jonathan in Jerusalem say, the feeling of the hands is as the feeling of the hands of Esau. They felt like Esau's hands. Right? And then verse 23, what do we read? And he discerned him not, because his hands were hairy, and his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. He discerned him not. Isaac could not see. So he had trouble. He had trouble judging that this was really Jacob. I mean, yeah, he could tell that it was Jacob's voice. Maybe he thought Esau just kind of sounded like Jacob because of, maybe he'd been out working or weak or whatever, right? Tired. But he could feel Esau. Even though, he could trust that. He thought he could trust that. The verse says, because his hands were hairy as his brother Esau's hands. His arms, his hands are not just going to become hairy overnight. It makes more sense for Esau's voice to change than it does for Jacob to just become hairy. So he blessed him, the verse says. This should say that he intended to. And he determined to bless him. Because the blessing was not given right there. It's given later. Unless this intends to mean a common blessing. Congratulating him on how quickly he caught the animals in the hunt. And then, afterwards he gave him the patriarchal blessings, because he hasn't yet. And it appears that he was not fully satisfied either. But we know that the plan worked. Goat. If it really was a goat, because I have no idea. But according to the Bible, it seems like it tastes like venison. So Isaac was not able to tell the difference. We know that he was amazed at how fast it was prepared. But his son Jacob seems to have, learned early on from his father that it was that it was okay to lie to save your life. So he says, God helped him find the deer. He lies a lot. He lies when he tells Isaac he's Esau. We see here that, Isaac could not understand why Esau had Jacob's voice. We know that the hairy hands, as well as the smell, these seem to convince him that this really was Esau. And he blesses him, right? So let's go on to verse 24 now. And he said, Art thou my very son Esau? And he said, I am. And said, Art thou my very son Esau? We see that Isaac is still having doubt. He's still doubting that this really is Esau because of his voice. And Jacob answers and says, and he said, I am. Okay, let us look at the observations of Jarkey here. In order to excuse Jacob from lying, that he does not say, I am Esau. Only I. But you see, this just is not going to do. It is an answer to the question, okay? And it's meant to deceive him. Jacob did intend for him to understand that he really is Esau. Jacob lied. He lied many, many, many times. This time he does it to save himself. Okay, let's go to verse 25 here. And he said, Bring it near to me, and I will eat of my son's venison, that my soul may bless thee. And he brought it near to him, and he did eat. And he brought him wine, and he drank. Isaac is satisfied. He now seems to believe that this is Esau. So we read, and he said, Bring it near to me. So Jacob agrees to eat the meat that that was brought to him. Or I should say Isaac agrees to eat the meat. I don't know why I said Jacob. The verse says, And I will eat my son's venison, that my soul may bless thee. You see, he hadn't blessed him yet. At least not the main or principal blessing. The verse goes on, and he brought it near to him, and he did eat. So Jacob set the table for him. Maybe he, guided his father's hands. Maybe he fed him. The verse says, and he brought him wine, and he drank. So Isaac ate, and he drank, and he became refreshed. And in the right temper, in the right disposition, right, to bless his son. And then what do we get in verse 26? And his father Isaac said unto him, Come near now and kiss me, my son. It says, and his father Isaac said unto him. So after Isaac got full, he ate, he got his fill of the drink and the meat. The meal was over. The plate and everything, was taken away. Isaac says, Come near now and kiss me, my son. This could have been done out of affection, right? It could have been done out of excitement for such a good meal, right? Or who knows? Maybe, just maybe, Isaac still was suspicious. And he wanted to satisfy himself before, he blesses his son. Perhaps the smell of his breath, and also the garments that he's wearing. So as we read on, we see that all of his doubts are removed. Isaac pronounces the blessing on Jacob. The opening words do show that he still believed that this was Esau. And we read that the prayer and the wish are for prosperity, for superiority. And it ends with a repeat of the words that God spoke to Abraham. What we can discover here through all of this is that Isaac believed that the line of the covenant would continue through who? Through Esau. Not through Jacob. Through Esau. Let's continue on. We're going to go to verse 27 now. And he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment and blessed him, and said, See, the smell of my son is of the smell of the field which the Lord hath blessed. So he came near and kissed him. Easy one to break down. Jacob came near, kissed his father Isaac. The verse then adds, and he smelled the smell of his raiment. So Isaac could smell the clothes, which would of course smell like Esau, because they were his, like the field, which would not smell like sheep. The verse says, and he blessed him. This means the patriarchal blessing and the prophetic blessing. Then we see, and said, See, the smell of my son is as the smell of the field which the Lord hath blessed. This tells us that Esau smelled like the field, full of fragrant herbs, full of flowers, spices, all that were watered by the dew and the rain of heaven. And because they were fruitful, they would have emitted a most moist and delightful odor. So Jacob could, he was wearing Esau's clothes, so of course Jacob smelled like Esau. Right? Let's continue on, verse 28. Therefore God gave thee of the dew of heaven, and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn and wine. It starts off with this. It says, Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven. This would be better translated as shall, or even will give thee, because remember, he was blessed of God, and we know that the blessed seed would spring from him, as well as his posterity, meaning his descendants. They would inhabit the land of Canaan. Now, what we read here comes by way of a prophecy, not some wish. Okay, the dew of heaven mentioned here, it's not because it makes the earth fruitful, okay, but because of the land of Canaan. A portion of Jacob's posterity, meaning his descendants, it needs the dew. It had it. Remember, rain does not fall there very often. In fact, twice a year, in the spring and in the autumn. These two rains are called the former and the later. Twice a year, the Middle East gets rain. The land of Canaan is made fruitful by these dews of heaven. They signify the doctrines and the blessings of grace. All of Jacob's spiritual offsprings are partakers of that, especially under the gospel dispensation. Let's take a look at something. Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 2. Deuteronomy 32, verse 2. And it says, My doctrine shall drop, listen now, as the rain. My speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. Amen. The verse then goes on, what's it say? And the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn and wine. Yes, the land of Canaan was a fat and fertile land. It abounded with all good things. Take a look at Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8. A land of wheat and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of oil, olive, and honey. Now, I do want to touch on something, but before that, I want to finish this, because this is figurative of the gospel provisions. But first, I want to talk about this. The word corn here. A lot of people. This right here is for you who do not know your apologetics, but you do want to learn it. Corn that we call corn today is actually maize. It's a completely different plant. When you see corn in the Bible, a lot of people go, well, corn didn't even grow in that area at that time. The word corn literally means grain of the land. The corn that you're thinking of, and I was one of you, is actually maize. It's a completely different plant. It just got the name corn because it is the grain of the land in the United States. Okay? I just wanted to touch on that because, see, the word of ordinances which God gave to Jacob and Israel in all the ages, especially the time of the Messiah, Jacob's eminent seed and son. Okay? Take a look at Psalms 147, verse 19. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. All right, so like I told you guys, we may split this in two. Let's do one more verse. Let's do verse 29 now, and then we're going to end for the night, or for the day. You guys are watching this probably during the day. I'm recording this at night. So, verse 29, it says, Let people serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be every one that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. If you're someone who's met me in person, you've heard me talk about Israel, I say, God said, let those who bless Israel be blessed, and those who curse Israel be cursed. This right here is where we get it. We see Jacob he would be the head of the household. The verse says, Let people serve thee, let thy mother's son bow down to thee. Don't forget the blessing that Isaac gave to Jacob here belonged to him since the day that Esau sold it to him. This is what we would call a preferential right-hand blessing. One that a patriarch spoke as an oracle of God. He was God's agent speaking the blessing. Okay? It was spoken without repentance. God would not change it. It would be done to the utmost. The blessing tells us that even nature would bless Jacob. Jacob would rule over nations. That includes his brother. Okay? Who would bow before him. The curse of God would be on anyone who cursed him, and would bless anyone who blessed him. Now, yes, Jacob did get this through trickery, through deceit, through lying, but it will not be reversed. This right here, whether any of us want to accept it or not, this is the will of God. As well as Rebekah and Jacob. Or it would not have gone well. Bear that in mind. This shows us that sometimes, God would use things like this. Okay? Things that in our minds are not, to us, do not appear to be the right way. God will use that to get the results that He wants, because He is God. God gets the last call. God is the ultimate judge. Amen. So I want to again say thank you all for joining me here. That's my son you hear over blessing. He's decided to start watching. So I want to say thank you all for joining me here. I pray the Lord continues to bless and keep each and every one of you. And guys, if you ever need me for anything, do not hesitate to ask. Weddings, anything, hospital visitations, whatever it is, if I can help, if you need your house blessed, whatever, I am here for you. I hope you're enjoying the new opening and closing here on the videos and over on the podcast. I want to say thank you to Joe again say thank you, Joe Bacon, for doing those. Again, I pray the Lord continues to bless and keep each and every one of you. I love you all. I pray that you, pray you come back next week, or go over to listen to the podcast, guys. There's so many that I know a lot of you that listen here would enjoy that are over there. I did one on today, actually, because today's Friday. I know you're going to be listening on Sunday, but here Friday, I just did a episode for Good Friday. So thank you all. God bless you and keep you, and I'll see you all here next week. I love you all. God bless you.
You have been listening to Sermons in the Park with Reverend Jamie McCaskill. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. And as always, thank you for listening.